My name is Samantha and I am 28 years old. I never thought my own sister would humiliate me in front of strangers. The sting of her palm against my cheek hurt less than the betrayal I saw in her eyes. For 3 years, I had secretly paid her college tuition, covered our parents' medical bills, and kept our family afloat financially. The truth was known by nobody, not even my parents. That slap changed everything. I stopped being the family ATM and finally stood up for myself. Before I share how I found the courage to walk away and what happened afterward, let me know where you are watching from. Hit subscribe if you have ever had to choose between self-respect and family loyalty. Growing up as the oldest child in our modest suburban home in Michigan, I always felt a sense of responsibility that seemed to skip over my younger sister, Katie. From an early age, the differences in how our parents treated us were subtle but unmistakable. At 22, Katie was still the baby of the family, the one who seemed to need protection and special attention. Our mother, Linda, doted on her, praising her smallest achievements while my accomplishments were simply expected. Our father, Robert, always seemed to have extra time for Katie. Weekend fishing trips, helping with her science projects, attending her soccer games. For me, there was usually just a pat on the back and a quick good job. I learned to be self-sufficient by necessity. When Katie needed new clothes for school, Mom would take her shopping for hours. When I needed something, I was told to be practical and to make do with what I had. This pattern continued throughout our childhood, with Katie receiving the lion's share of attention, affection, and resources. It was not that my parents did not love me, they just seemed to love her more effortlessly. By high school, I had accepted my role as the responsible one. I worked part-time jobs, maintained a perfect GPA, and applied for every scholarship I could find. Katie, meanwhile, focused on her social life and relied on our parents to solve her problems. She developed a sense of entitlement that only grew stronger as the years passed. Whenever I tried to talk to our parents about the imbalance, they would dismiss my concerns. "You are the oldest, Samantha," they would say. "You have to set an example." Or worse, "Do not be jealous of your sister." Our family's financial situation took a drastic turn 3 years ago. Dad had been working as a sales manager at a manufacturing company for nearly 20 years when the business declared bankruptcy. At 55, with no college degree and specialized skills tied to a dying industry, he struggled to find comparable employment. The small severance package he received quickly dwindled as bills continued to arrive. Mom picked up more shifts at the department store where she worked part-time, but her income barely covered groceries and utilities. The stress took a toll on their health. Dad developed high blood pressure and Mom started experiencing anxiety attacks. They tried to hide their financial struggles, but I could see the worry lines deepening on their faces. By that time, I had graduated from college with a degree in computer science and secured a well-paying position at a technology firm. I was making good money, $75,000 a year, with excellent benefits and promising career prospects. Without hesitation, I stepped in to help my family. I started by paying their mortgage 1 month when I noticed a past due notice on the kitchen counter. Then I covered Dad's medical bills when he hesitated to refill his prescriptions. Soon I was regularly transferring money to their account, always with the excuse that I had received a bonus or had extra funds that month. My parents were reluctant to accept my help at first, but eventually necessity overcame pride. What they did not know was just how much I was contributing. I downplayed the amounts, making it seem like occasional assistance rather than the systematic support it had become. I never wanted them to feel like failures or to be indebted to me. Part of me also feared that if they knew the full extent of my financial contribution, it would somehow diminish their role as parents. Katie's situation added another layer of complexity. She had always dreamed of attending Westlake University, a prestigious private college known for its communications program. When she was accepted, our family celebrated as if she had won the lottery. The excitement quickly faded when the financial aid package arrived. Even with a partial scholarship, the annual tuition and fees amounted to nearly $30,000. I will never forget the night our parents had to tell Katie they could not afford to send her to Westlake. She sobbed uncontrollably, accusing them of ruining her future. The look of defeat in my father's eyes as he sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, broke my heart. My mother paced the room, making desperate suggestions about community college or taking a gap year to save money. That night, I made a decision that would ultimately change the course of our family dynamics. I approached Katie privately and offered to pay for her education. I had been saving for a down payment on a house, but I reasoned that could wait. Family came first, and Katie's education seemed like the most important investment at that moment. She threw her arms around me, crying tears of joy. I promised her I would take care of the tuition, but I asked her to keep our arrangement between us. I did not want our parents to feel guilty or inadequate. Katie agreed readily, too excited about attending her dream school to question my motives. We told our parents that Katie had received an additional scholarship from an alumni foundation. They were overjoyed and proud, never suspecting the truth. As the months passed, my financial responsibilities grew. Beyond Katie's tuition, I was covering most of my parents' mortgage, utility bills, car payments, and medical expenses. I lived modestly in a small one-bedroom apartment, drove an old car, and limited my own expenses to ensure I could support everyone. My savings dwindled, but I told myself it was temporary. Once Dad found a good job and Katie graduated, things would get better. Meanwhile, my personal life continued to develop. I had been dating David, a software engineer I met at work, for about 2 years. He was kind, supportive, and understood my commitment to my family, though even he did not know the full extent of my financial contributions. We had talked about moving in together, but I always found reasons to delay, not wanting to explain why I could not afford to split the rent on a nicer place. Katie was thriving at Westlake University. She joined an exclusive sorority, made friends with the daughters of wealthy business executives and politicians, and fully embraced campus life. She rarely came home on weekends, always having social events to attend or group projects to complete. When she did visit, she would regale our parents with stories about her exciting college experiences, careful to avoid any mention of the expenses involved. I noticed subtle changes in Katie's behavior toward me. The gratitude she had initially shown was fading, replaced by a sense of expectation. She began asking for additional money for sorority dues, spring break trips, and designer clothes to keep up with her new friends. When I occasionally suggested she get a part-time job to cover her personal expenses, she would look offended and remind me that she needed to focus on her studies and networking opportunities. The dynamics between us grew increasingly strained. Katie would cancel our sisterly lunch dates at the last minute, or spend the entire time texting her friends. She stopped asking about my life or showing interest in my work. It hurt, but I rationalized her behavior as typical college self-absorption. I remembered how focused I had been on my own studies and friends during those years. Still, there were moments that made me question our relationship, like when she posted photos from an expensive restaurant on Instagram, but claimed she could not afford to chip in for our mother's birthday gift. Or when she borrowed my favorite dress for a party and returned it stained, shrugging it off with a casual, "Sorry, just buy another one." These small incidents accumulated, creating a growing knot of resentment in my stomach that I tried my best to ignore. The email inviting me to speak at the Westlake University Communication Department seminar series came as a surprise. My company had recently launched an innovative social media analytics platform that was gaining attention in the industry. The department chair had heard me on a technology podcast and thought I would be a valuable addition to their emerging media technologies panel. The event coincided with a 3-day field trip to New York City where students would visit major media companies and attend the seminar. I accepted the invitation, excited about the professional opportunity, and secretly hoping to spend some quality time with Katie. We had drifted further apart over the past year, and I thought this shared experience might help reconnect us. I tried calling Katie to tell her about my participation, but she did not pick up. I left a voicemail and sent a text, but received only a brief, "Okay" in response. I assumed she was busy with midterms and did not think much of it. The April morning when I arrived at the hotel where the Westlake students were staying, I felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. I spotted Katie in the lobby surrounded by a group of stylishly dressed young women. She was wearing an outfit I had never seen before. An expensive-looking blazer over a silk blouse, designer jeans, and leather boots that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her hair was highlighted and styled professionally, making her look older and somehow different from the sister I knew. When our eyes met, Katie's expression froze. She whispered something to her friends, then reluctantly walked over to greet me. Her hug was stiff, her smile forced. "I thought I was going to die when I saw you," she muttered through clenched teeth. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming to this?" I reminded her about my message, but she waved it off. "Whatever. Just don't embarrass me, okay? My friends think I come from money." Her words stung, but I nodded, not wanting to create conflict before the day had even started. What followed was even more painful. When one of her friends asked who I was, Katie hesitated before saying, "This is my cousin Samantha. She works in tech or something." The casual dismissal of our relationship hit me like a physical blow. I wanted to correct her, to ask why she was ashamed to acknowledge me as her sister, but something in her pleading eyes stopped me. I played along, making small talk about the seminar while trying to ignore the ache in my chest. Throughout the morning tour of a major broadcasting studio, Katie kept her distance, sticking with her sorority sisters and barely acknowledging my presence. I overheard snippets of their conversations, mentions of weekend trips to the Hamptons, internships secured through family connections, and complaints about first-class flights being fully booked for spring break. It was clear that Katie was moving in circles far removed from our middle-class reality. The group lunch at an upscale Manhattan restaurant only widened the gap. I sat at the end of the table making conversation with a few professors while Katie held court among her friends at the opposite end. The bill was covered by the university, but I noticed Katie ordering the most expensive items on the menu and an extra cocktail she slipped to her friend when the professors were not looking. It was during this lunch that I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. One of Katie's friends was complaining about her parents questioning her expenses. "God, parents are so annoying about money," the girl said. "What about yours?" Katie laughed. "My parents are clueless. They think college is like when they went in the Stone Age. My dad lost his job a while back, so they're kind of useless financially." She rolled her eyes as if her parents' financial hardship was a personal inconvenience. "But I have ways of getting what I need." She did not mention that those ways included her older sister sacrificing her own financial security. When the friend asked about her designer purse, a brand I recognized as costing well over $1,000, Katie lowered her voice, but I could still hear her. "Birthday money from my grandmother. She's loaded and has dementia, so she forgets she already gave me presents. I just ask again every few months." Our grandmother had passed away 2 years earlier after a long battle with Alzheimer's. The casual lie and disrespect for our grandmother's memory made me feel physically ill. I excused myself from the table and went to the restroom, splashing cold water on my face and taking deep breaths to calm my racing heart. When I returned, I caught Katie's eye and motioned for her to join me in the hallway. She sighed dramatically but complied, making a show of being inconvenienced. "What?" she demanded once we were alone. "I'm trying to enjoy lunch. I want to talk about what is going on," I said, keeping my voice calm and low. "Why are you pretending I am your cousin? Why are you lying about our family?" Katie scoffed. "You wouldn't understand. These people come from serious money. Their parents are CEOs and politicians. I can't exactly tell them my dad is unemployed and my mom folds sweaters at Macy's. It's called networking, Samantha. This is how I will get a good job after graduation. But lying about grandma? That was disrespectful," I said. "Oh my God, it was just a little white lie. She wouldn't care." Katie rolled her eyes. "Why are you even here? You're not part of the communications department." "I was invited as a speaker," I reminded her. "I thought you would be happy to see me. We barely talk anymore because you are always so judgmental," she snapped. "Always so perfect, Samantha with her perfect job and perfect boyfriend. Some of us are still trying to figure things out. I need to make connections. And you showing up in your off-the-rack clothes and talking about our family is not helping." Her words hurt, but I pressed on. "Katie, I have been paying your tuition for 3 years. I have been helping mom and dad with their bills. I am living in a tiny apartment and driving a car with 200,000 miles on it, so you can attend this school and have these opportunities. The least you could do is show a little gratitude, a little respect." Katie's face contorted with anger. "There it is. I was waiting for you to throw that in my face. You offered to pay my tuition. I didn't beg you. If you are expecting me to worship you for it, you can stop. I didn't ask to be born into a family that couldn't afford to send me to a decent school." Her voice had risen, attracting the attention of people passing by. Some of her friends had stepped into the hallway, watching our confrontation with curious eyes. I felt exposed and vulnerable, but I could not back down now. "That is not what I mean," I said, lowering my voice. "I do not want worship. I just want basic respect. The way you are talking about our family, about me." "You are so controlling," Katie interrupted. "Just because you write some checks does not mean you own me. You have no idea what it is like trying to fit in here. Everyone has connections. Everyone has parents who can help them get jobs. What do I have? A sister who thinks giving me money makes her my boss." "I don't think that at all," I protested, feeling tears welling in my eyes. "I just want—" "Stop making a scene," Katie hissed, aware that her friends were watching. "You are embarrassing me. This is exactly why I did not tell them you are my sister. You always have to make everything about you." The unfairness of her accusation left me speechless. I had spent years putting her needs above my own, sacrificing my savings, my time, and my own dreams to support hers. And here she was treating me like an embarrassment and inconvenience. "Maybe we should talk about this later," I suggested, trying to salvage the situation, "when we are both calmer." "There is nothing to talk about," Katie snapped. "I am an adult. I do not need your approval or your little life lectures. And you know what? I do not need your money either. I can get student loans like everyone else." "You should have told me that 3 years ago," I said quietly, "before I spent nearly $90,000 on your education." Something in Katie snapped. Her face flushed red. Her eyes narrowed with shocking speed. Her hand flew up and struck my cheek with a resounding slap that echoed through the hallway. The physical pain was immediate, a sharp sting that made my eyes water, but it was nothing compared to the emotional blow. "Do not ever talk to me about money again," she seethed, her voice low and venomous. "You are pathetic." With that, she turned and stalked back to her friends, who were watching with wide eyes and covered mouths. I stood frozen, my hand on my burning cheek, humiliation washing over me in waves. A few professors had emerged from the dining room, drawn by the commotion, their expressions a mixture of shock and discomfort. In that moment, something broke inside me. The careful justifications I had built over years, the excuses I had made for Katie's behavior, the hope that my sacrifices were strengthening our family bonds, all of it crumbled in the wake of that public slap. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity what our relationship had become. I was not a beloved sister or valued family member. I was a resource to be exploited, then discarded when I asked for basic human respect. I gathered what dignity I could and walked away. I sent a brief email to the department chair explaining that a family emergency would prevent me from participating in the afternoon seminar. Then I checked into a different hotel away from the Westlake group and sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing and my heart breaking. With trembling hands, I dialed my parents' number. It was barely 4 in the afternoon, but I needed to talk to someone, to make sense of what had just happened. Mom answered on the third ring, her voice cheerful until she heard my shaky greeting. "Samantha, what is wrong? You sound terrible." I took a deep breath and tried to steady my voice. "Katie slapped me." I said the words, sounding surreal even as I spoke them. "We were at the communications department trip in New York and she slapped me in front of everyone, her professors, her classmates, everyone." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What did you do?" Mom finally asked. Her question hit me like another slap. She automatically assumed I had provoked Katie, that I must have done something to deserve being physically assaulted by my own sister. I was so shocked I could barely respond. "I didn't do anything," I managed to say. She was lying to her friends about our family, saying terrible things about Dad losing his job, making up stories about Grandma having dementia and giving her money for designer clothes. When I confronted her privately, she got angry and slapped me. Mom sighed heavily. "You know how sensitive Katie is about our financial situation, Samantha. She is trying to fit in with her friends. You should not have embarrassed her." I could not believe what I was hearing. Embarrassed her? She slapped me in public. She's been lying about being my cousin instead of my sister because she is ashamed of me. "Well, you can be a bit judgmental sometimes," Mom said carefully. "Katie is at a very crucial point in her education. These connections she is making could determine her entire future. Perhaps you should call and apologize for whatever you said that upset her." The conversation continued in this vein, with Mom making excuses for Katie's behavior and suggesting ways I could make amends. When Dad got on the phone, he was no better. "You know how your sister is, Samantha," he said wearily. "She has a temper like your mother's. You should not have confronted her in front of her friends." "What were you thinking?" "I wasn't thinking about confronting her, Dad. I was invited to speak at her university event. I was thinking we might spend some time together. I was thinking my own sister would acknowledge me as family instead of pretending I am some distant relative she barely knows." "Well, did you consider that maybe she has her reasons?" he asked. "College is different these days. Social status matters. You are established in your career already, but Katie is still finding her way." By the time I hung up, I felt completely alone. The two people who should have been outraged on my behalf had instead chosen to defend Katie's actions and blame me for the incident. It was a familiar pattern, but never had it been so blatant, so hurtful. I texted my closest friend, Amanda, asking if she was free to talk. Within minutes, my phone rang. Unlike my parents, Amanda listened without interrupting as I recounted the day's events. When I finished, she did not question my actions or defend Katie. "Sam, this is abuse," she said firmly. "Not just the slap, which is absolutely unacceptable, but the whole dynamic. Your family has been taking advantage of you financially and emotionally for years. This is classic eldest daughter syndrome. You have been conditioned to be the responsible one, the provider, the emotional support for everyone else. But who supports you?" Her words resonated deeply. I had never thought of my family situation in those terms before. But as Amanda continued to speak, pointing out patterns I had normalized, I began to see things differently. "You know, I love you and I have never said anything because you always defend them," Amanda said. "But watching you deplete your savings to pay for Katie's education while she treats you like garbage, it's painful. You deserve better, Sam. You deserve basic respect and appreciation." "Do I, though?" I whispered, voicing a doubt that had been growing for years. "They are my family. Isn't it my responsibility to help when I can?" "Helping is one thing," Amanda replied. "Being exploited is another. There is a difference between supporting your family through hard times and enabling entitled, disrespectful behavior. Katie is an adult. Your parents are adults. They are making choices and they are choosing to take your help while treating you as less than." As our conversation continued, I found myself mentally calculating exactly how much money I had given my family over the past 3 years. Katie's tuition was $90,000 so far. My parents' mortgage payments totaled about $36,000. Utilities, car payments, medical bills, and other miscellaneous expenses added at least another $20,000. In total, I had spent close to $150,000 supporting my family, a significant portion of my income that could have gone toward my own future. But the financial toll paled in comparison to the emotional one. I had sacrificed my time, energy, and dreams. I had delayed moving in with David, put off buying a home, canceled vacations, and worked overtime to ensure I could maintain my support. And through it all, I had received little acknowledgement, let alone gratitude. That night I barely slept. I paced the hotel room, replaying Katie's slap, my parents' reactions, and Amanda's words in my mind. By morning, a clarity I had never experienced before washed over me. I could see the unhealthy dynamics that had defined our family relationships for decades. I could see how I had enabled them by accepting the role of provider without demanding basic respect in return. With that clarity came a decision. I would no longer be the family financial support system. I would no longer sacrifice my well-being for people who could not even acknowledge my worth as a person, let alone appreciate my contributions. It was time to establish boundaries, not out of spite or revenge, but out of a newfound respect for myself and a recognition that the current situation was unsustainable and deeply harmful. The decision brought both anxiety and relief. I worried about how my family would manage without my support, especially Katie with her tuition payments. But for the first time in years, I also felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. I had been carrying the financial and emotional burden of 3 other adults, and it was time to put it down. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfers to my parents' account and Katie's tuition payment plan. I drafted an email to Westlake University's financial aid office, notifying them that I would no longer be making payments on Katie's behalf after the current term. Then I booked an earlier flight back home, knowing I needed to have a face-to-face conversation with my family. As the plane took off from New York, I gazed out the window at the receding skyline. I was leaving behind more than just a city. I was leaving behind a version of myself that had accepted less than she deserved. The thought was terrifying but also exhilarating. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself. 3 days after returning from New York, I arranged a family meeting at my parents' house. I had spent those days steeling myself for the confrontation, rehearsing what I would say and preparing for their reactions. David had offered to come with me for moral support, but I knew this was something I needed to do alone. When I arrived, the atmosphere was already tense. Katie had returned from the trip the previous day and had apparently given her version of events. She sat on the couch, arms crossed defensively, barely acknowledging my presence. Mom busied herself in the kitchen making coffee nobody had asked for, while Dad sat in his recliner, newspaper open but unread. "I guess we should get this over with," Dad said as I took a seat at the dining table. "Your mother and I have been talking and we think this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Katie says she apologized already, so I am not sure what else there is to discuss." "She has not apologized," I said calmly. "We have not spoken since the incident." Katie rolled her eyes. "I texted you. You did not respond." "A text is not an apology," I replied. "But that is not why I asked for this meeting." "Well, why are we here then?" Mom asked, setting down coffee mugs with more force than necessary. "To drag up old grievances? Samantha, you know your sister has always been sensitive. You should have been more careful about how you approached her." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay focused. This meeting is not about the slap, although that was certainly a breaking point. This is about our family dynamics and financial arrangements that have been in place for the past 3 years. "Financial arrangements?" Dad repeated, his brow furrowing. "What are you talking about?" I looked at Katie, whose expression had shifted from annoyance to alarm. "You did not tell them?" I asked her. "Tell us what?" Mom demanded, looking between us. There was no turning back now. "For the past 3 years I have been paying Katie's full tuition at Westlake," I said. "That alumni scholarship she supposedly received, that was me. I have also been paying the majority of your mortgage, Dad's medical bills, and most of the household utilities." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sat down heavily, coffee forgotten. Dad stared at me as if I had started speaking a foreign language. Katie looked at the floor, her posture rigid. "That cannot be right," Dad finally said. "We would have known. The bank would have said something." "The bills are being paid from my account," I finished for him. "I set up automatic payments after you lost your job. I did not want you to worry about losing the house while you were looking for work. As for Katie's tuition, I made arrangements directly with the university finance office." "This is ridiculous," Mom said, her voice rising. "Why would you do all that and not tell us? Are you trying to make us feel bad, to control us?" "I was trying to help," I replied, feeling a familiar knot of frustration forming. "You were struggling. Katie wanted to go to Westlake. I had the means to assist, so I did. I did not tell you because I did not want you to feel embarrassed or indebted." "So what is your point?" Katie interjected. "You have been secretly paying our bills. Congratulations, you are a saint. Are we supposed to bow down and worship you now?" Her words echoed what she had said in New York, revealing a bitterness I had not fully recognized before. It hurt, but I pressed on. "My point is that I have been supporting this family financially while being treated as an outsider. An annoyance. Someone whose feelings and dignity do not matter. I have spent over $150,000 in 3 years while receiving nothing but criticism and disrespect in return." Dad's face flushed red. "So this is about money. You are keeping score. I did not raise you to hold financial assistance over your family's head. This is not about the money itself," I tried to explain. "It is about the relationship between the money and the way I am treated. I was slapped in public by my sister who has been pretending I am not even related to her. When I called you both about it, you immediately took her side and blamed me. This has been the pattern my entire life and I cannot do it anymore." "What exactly are you saying?" Mom asked, her voice suddenly small. "I am saying that I am no longer going to be this family's financial support system. I have canceled the automatic payments to your accounts. I have informed Westlake that I will not be paying Katie's tuition after this semester. The explosion I had anticipated came immediately. Katie jumped to her feet, her face contorted with rage. You cannot do that, she shouted. I am in the middle of my degree. What am I supposed to do? Drop out. This is so typical of you, Samantha. Using money to control everyone around you. Dad joined in, his voice thundering through the small living room. This is emotional blackmail. You cannot just pull the rug out from under us because your feelings got hurt. Dad, you have turned down multiple job offers because they were not at the level you wanted. You have choices too. My parents exchanged a glance I could not quite interpret. How do you know about the job offers? Dad asked. Because I talked to Uncle Jim, I replied, referring to his brother who had recommended him for several positions. He has been concerned about your reluctance to accept anything less than your previous salary. This conversation is not about my job search, Dad deflected. It is about you making a rash decision that affects all of us because you and Katie had a sisterly spat. That slap was not a spat, I said firmly. It was assault, and it was the culmination of years of disrespect and entitlement. I deserve better from my family. I deserve basic courtesy and appreciation. So this is what it comes down to, Katie sneered. Poor Samantha does not feel appreciated enough, so she is taking her ball and going home. God, you are so pathetic. Katie, Mom admonished, but there was no real force behind it. No, let her speak, I said. This is exactly what I am talking about. I have supported her education, her lifestyle, her future, and in return I get contempt. Why would I continue to invest in someone who sees me this way? Because that is what family does, Dad shouted, pounding his fist on the armrest of his chair. We make sacrifices for each other. Sacrifices should be reciprocal, I countered. What sacrifices have any of you made for me lately? When was the last time any of you asked about my life, my dreams, my struggles? When was the last time anyone in this family put my needs first or even considered them at all? The question hung in the air, met with uncomfortable silence. They could not answer because we all knew the truth. Our family dynamic had been one way for too long. Parents and sister taking, Samantha giving. The revelation seemed to momentarily stun them, but it did not last. So what happens now? Mom finally asked, her voice quivering. You just cut us off completely. I shook my head. I am not cutting you off emotionally. I still want to be part of this family. I still love you all, but financially, yes, you need to become self-sufficient. Dad needs to accept a job, even if it is not his dream position. Mom might need to work more hours. Katie needs to apply for financial aid like most college students. You cannot just spring this on us and expect us to adjust overnight, Katie protested. The semester ends in 6 weeks. How am I supposed to figure out funding for next year that quickly? The same way thousands of other students do every year, I replied. The financial aid office can help you. I will give you all 30 days to make arrangements before the last of my scheduled payments stop. That should be enough time to start the process. The meeting devolved from there. Katie stormed out, calling me every name she could think of. Mom broke down in tears, accusing me of betraying the family. Dad switched between angry outbursts and cold silence. None of it was easy to hear, but I held firm. For the first time in my life, I was prioritizing my own well-being over their demands. And despite the pain, it felt right. As I prepared to leave, Dad delivered what he clearly thought would be the ultimate deterrent. If you go through with this, Samantha, you are no longer welcome in this house. You are choosing money over family, and I cannot accept that. I looked at him sadly. I am not choosing money over family, Dad. I am choosing self-respect and healthy boundaries. I hope someday you can understand the difference. With that, I walked out the door, uncertain when or if I would return. The weight of their anger and disappointment followed me, but it was lighter than the burden I had carried for years. For the first time in my adult life, I was free to build my own future without the crushing responsibility of carrying 3 other adults on my shoulders. The weeks following my confrontation with my family were simultaneously the most difficult and most liberating of my life. I moved to a new apartment across town, partly to give myself physical distance from the situation, and partly because I could finally afford a better place without the financial drain of supporting my family. The two-bedroom unit with large windows and a small balcony costs only marginally more than my previous cramped studio, but the difference in my quality of life was immeasurable. David helped me move, carrying boxes and assembling furniture without complaint. "You look different," he commented as we collapsed onto the couch after a long day of unpacking. "Lighter somehow." He was right. Despite the emotional turmoil, I felt physically lighter, as if a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The constant background anxiety about managing my family's finances had disappeared, leaving room for thoughts about my own life and future. Still, the separation was not without pain. The first few nights in my new place, I would reach for my phone to check in with my parents or text Katie, only to remember that we were not speaking. The silence from their end was deafening. I had expected anger, even attempts to change my mind, but instead received complete radio silence. It was as if they had decided that if they could not have me on their terms, they would not have me at all. That changed about 2 weeks after our confrontation. My phone lit up with a text from Katie. "The financial aid office says I don't qualify for enough aid to cover everything because of your income last year. This is your fault. Fix it." No hello. No acknowledgement of our conflict, just a demand for me to solve her problem. I did not respond. 3 days later she called. When I did not pick up, she left a voicemail. "The tuition payment for next semester is due in 2 weeks. Her voice crackled through the speaker, a mixture of anger and panic evident. "If you do not pay it, I will have to drop out. Is that what you want? To ruin my future because of your ego? Mom and Dad are devastated. I hope you are happy with yourself." The guilt trip was familiar, but this time it did not work. I deleted the message without returning the call. The old Samantha would have capitulated immediately, prioritizing Katie's education over my own well-being. The new Samantha recognized the manipulation for what it was. My parents began their campaign shortly after. First came the pleading text from Mom. "Please reconsider, Samantha. Katie's future is at stake. We can work through our differences as a family." When that did not work, Dad tried intimidation. "Your grandfather would be ashamed of how you are treating your family. This is not how we raised you." The most difficult messages came from extended family members who had clearly heard a one-sided version of events. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I had always been close to suddenly viewed me as the villain who had abandoned my struggling family out of spite. Few bothered to ask for my perspective, and those who did seemed skeptical of my explanations. Through it all, Amanda remained my rock. She checked in daily, listened without judgment, and reminded me that I was making a healthy choice, not a selfish one. David, too, provided unwavering support, never once suggesting I should give in to my family's demands. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Melissa Chan, who specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting. Our weekly sessions became a lifeline as I navigated the complex emotions of grief, guilt, anger, and liberation that surged through me in unpredictable waves. "People often think setting boundaries with family means you do not love them," Dr. Chan told me during one particularly difficult session, but the opposite is true. Healthy boundaries allow for authentic relationships based on mutual respect.